On Wednesday, October 19th, 2016, Building Community Workshops Elaine Morales presented Rapido at Next City's World Stage as part of the Habitat 3 conference in Quito, Ecuador.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Morales, and I'm a design associate at Building Community Workshop. We're a nonprofit community design center based in Texas, working to reach those residents not typically served by the design and planning community. Today, I want to talk to you about Rapido. Rapido was a collaboration between Building Community Workshop, the CDC of Brownsville, community organizers, and policymakers, with the generous support of the Ford Foundation. In BC, we believe in designing justice through community engagement, in bringing design thinking in areas where social, economic, and environmental resources are most scarce. One of the areas we work with is the Rio Grande Valley. The valley is located on the US-Mexican border in South Texas and has substantially higher poverty rates than Texas or the United States. Nearly 30% of all residents live below the poverty level, almost 3 times greater than the national average, and contains the poorest urban areas in the country. The region struggles with unemployment, low educational attainment, and development realities that leave many low-income residents disconnected from needed public services and infrastructure. These neighborhoods developed without regulations are identified by the US government as colonias. The limited stock of affordable housing in the region forces many low-income residents into colonias where development regulations are weak. The growth of these developments are a direct response to the lack of quality, affordable housing in the region. Colonias are socially strong but very vulnerable economically and environmentally. As a coastal region and sitting in a floodplain delta, the lower Rio Grande Valley often experiences tropical storms, hurricanes, and extreme flood events. What happens when dwellings, already inadequate and of substandard construction, are affected by the passage of a hurricane? That's what happened in 2008. Hurricane Dolly struck the Texas coast, causing roughly $1.3 billion in damages. Following the disaster, the Federal Agency for Emergency Management denied 85% of claims for housing assistance, with deferred maintenance being the most common reason for denial, with over 100,000 claims denied. 5 years passed, and hundreds of low-income families, the vast majority of them low-wage workers, the elderly, and the disabled, were still living in homes damaged by flooding and strong winds. It's been proven that the current U.S. disaster recovery system doesn't meet the long-term housing needs of affected residents. First, we spend too much in emergency shelter. All the money that goes to temporary solutions is money that is not invested in permanent ones. If we can reduce the cost of temporary housing, we can help more families get into a permanent home. Second, it takes too long for recovery funds to get to the families in need. We also wait till these funds are available to initiate procurement and bidding processes. These, together with permits and clearances, push back recovery. And third, we spend too much time redesigning the wheel every time a disaster hits. We need to shift these regulations in a way that they don't interfere with families getting back home as soon as possible after a disaster. So what do you do at this point? How do you fix the current disaster recovery system with a single idea? During a 2-year period, BC and partners met monthly with experts, local stakeholders, and community organizations to design a comprehensive system that empowers local jurisdictions to prepare, respond, and recover from a natural disaster. We created Rapido. Rapido is a new holistic approach that enables communities to recover from disaster within months instead of years, by considering all aspects of the disaster recovery process and organizing a system model and a housing model solution around the local characteristics of the people and the place. Through redesigning the entire U.S. disaster recovery process with the people that are impacted the most, Rapido fosters resilience within Texas communities and abates the social and economic impacts of disaster. It all started by rethinking the model of rebuilding. The Rapido housing model approaches recovery through a temp-to-perm approach. It provides immediate housing and invests in the first step towards a permanent home. This scalable temp-to-perm system is possible with the core, a temporary, modular, incremental unit. This unit is deployed to a family's property within weeks of the disaster, and then expanded into a permanent home through a system of custom design additions. The core bridges the gap between relief and recovery housing. Typically, manufactured emergency homes are disposed after the emergency or when the family is ready to move on. The core, on the contrary, is designed for durability and expansion, reducing material and financial waste associated with emergency solutions. The core has been designed for simplicity. Simplicity in its compact size, containing only essential living facilities. The unit is comprised of a living room, a kitchenette, ADA-compliant bathroom, and sleeping area. Simplicity in its capacity of expansion by removing just one of these green wall panels. This modular temporary home has a wet wall, which contains all necessary plumbing and makes it easy to connect with the expansion system, and an electrical chaise makes easy to wire the unit in half a day. Also, it's raised from the ground, and it's windstorm resistant, becoming a safe box within the expanded home. Rapido's core is also easy to build and assemble. The unit is built at a local lumberyard out of prefab panels in 3 days by a crew of 2 framers, 1 electrician, and 1 plumber. Its flat pack design enabled contractors to deploy it using a standard flatbed trailer and assemble it by hand within 4 days. A core unit is designed to be built on a homeowner's property using available labor and transportation. This differs to many manufactured units that require heavy machinery and have to be placed on newly constructed group sites. When resources are available and the post-disaster conditions are stable, the core can be expanded into a permanent home, meeting each family's needs and preferences. When we started working on Rapido, we were focused on testing Rapido's housing model. However, previous disaster recovery programs didn't fail just because the housing model was wrong. The majority of them failed because the system model wasn't comprehensive enough. The family's path goes beyond designing and replacing their home, and Rapido recognizes that. We learned that a successful disaster recovery system considers not only design and construction, but also funding streams, community outreach, case management, eligibility, and altogether policy. We wanted to create a system model centered in the people that are impacted the most in all these areas. The development of a navigator role was key in achieving this. Navigators are experienced community members that engage, inform, enroll, and guide families through the whole disaster recovery process. These navigators work in communities across the region on a daily basis, know the local language and culture, and have the trust of the community. They became the face of the program. The first 2 lines of this diagram focus on the temp-to-perm housing solution and how it relates to the family's home and their path in the disaster recovery process, a process that can be intimidating to them. Navigators work one-on-one and support families through the outreach and targeting process, helping them to gather and fill important documents for the assistance application, connecting them with essential services, and informing the families on the steps to follow until they move in. Because they are rooted in the community, families trust them to be their main point of contact, allowing eligibility specialists to focus solely on processing applications as quickly as possible, which together with the temp-to-perm housing model can bring families back home within 4 to 6 months. But we can't wait for a disaster to arrive to implement a new model to disaster recovery housing. We can't wait to redesign the wheel when the next disaster hits. Rapido can only be achieved by spending time and resources in planning for recovery, on what we call pre-recovery. Pre-recovery means pre-designing. We need to start designing before a disaster by engaging a diverse set of stakeholders like residents, community leaders, city officials, designers, and contractors. The design process will produce a wider variety of home designs than the typically available in a disaster recovery effort. The simple act of asking, "What would you like in a home?" offers homeowners choice in the event of a disaster and restores a feeling of ownership and pride. Second, pre-procurement. The goal of pre-procurement is to put in place, prior to a disaster, all necessary partners, communications, contracts, policies, and procedures. Pre-procurements allowed housing recovery to start at the earliest possible, to engage local labor and supply, and therefore enhance local economies. And finally, preparedness and training, to build reliable teams that support local jurisdictions and assist families. Preparedness and training reduces the timeline of receiving aid and emphasizes a grassroots-guided approach. By investing in recoveries, communities will be better prepared to recover. Successful recovery means that after a disaster hits, families will make choices, economies will be restored, and social networks, instead of disrupted, will be stronger. Rapido is a response to long-term disaster recovery at a number of scales, using a bottom-up, community-based approach that is centered on the families and geographies it intends to support. We designed and built 20 prototype homes with families affected by Hurricane Dolly back in 2008 as a way to test this scalable system. Rapido delivered housing faster and cheaper than the housing being built by bigger disaster recovery efforts in Texas. FEMA's temporary unit costs more to install than a complete Rapido home costs in the Rio Grande Valley. But the hallmark of the program was to provide choice in disaster recovery housing. Choice to stay, choice to go, and design choice at different scales and levels. At the regional scale, giving jurisdictions the choice of selecting the core outdoor design that better meet their contextual preferences. At the neighborhood, giving families the opportunity to design the post-disaster ready available housing choices through an inclusive process. And at the household level, where every family can shape the characteristics and details of their new home. Every family in the program received an unique home. We believe choice empowers. These are not cookie-cutter designs. This is the house of the Aldape family in Hidalgo County, which already sustained an intense flood event. This is the house of Ms. Avalos in Cameron County, who became a community leader with the support of her navigator. All families have their particular disaster recovery story. Presenting design choice instead of a disposable or standard model home establishes a sense of control and agency during a period of time that often leaves families feeling helpless. In practice, these choices result in a home that better meets each family's needs, builds stronger neighborhood attachment, and increase neighborhood stability and resilience. But we went farther than building Rapido prototypes and delivered a rapid disaster recovery housing report to the state as an outgrowth of the research, expertise, and lessons learned through the development of Rapido that includes comprehensive policy and technical recommendations. The Rapido program empowers local communities to choose how they will recover. If implemented, Rapido will strengthen local control in disaster recovery housing. Building the capacity to respond to a disaster is not easy for many smaller communities, but having a system in place for local jurisdictions to develop pre-disaster planning and partnership building will provide the tools to respond to a variety of challenges that may come in the future. We continue to engage local, state, and federal decision makers around Rapido. We are currently developing a draft of the first Rapido plan with a municipality in Texas, with the hope that the program is adopted and in the next disaster, the story is a completely different one. It's been a great opportunity to share Rapido with you today. To learn more about this program, visit rapidorecovery.org. I hope Rapido can inspire you to redefine the disaster recovery system in your home, to think of recovery ideas in your country, and to design a model that elevates the people that are impacted the most. Thank you.